real challenge to follow that. So one of the things that my family of origin really has always valued is education. Growing up, school was always prioritized, and my parents invested both time and money into our education in a way that they didn't in other parts of life. And it certainly paid off in some ways. I sometimes joke that we have more degrees per capita in my family than anyone really should have, including 3 Dr. Palms. It was basically an assumption that I would go to college, especially since I was a good student and I had always liked school. So my senior year of high school, I got myself accepted to one of those reputable small liberal arts colleges, just the right distance from home, and set off for my first year. And then sometime in the middle of that year, I started to realize I wasn't happy. Some of my classes were good, but they were all very theoretical. I was friendly with some folks, but I didn't really make friends. I didn't connect to the community or to the learning. And I felt so isolated from the world in that bubble of the 4-block by 4-block college campus, tucked into this tiny town in rural Iowa. I resisted a change for as long as I could, trying to stick it out, to make the best of it, to find enough good that I could make it through. But just a month after I finished my first year, I decided that I couldn't go back. It was scary. It defied everything that was expected of me. I was part of this very educated family. Both of my siblings were in PhD programs by that point. And here I was, not even able to make it past my first year of college. My parents never overtly said to me, "This is what you're supposed to do." But the way my family functioned showed me the expectation, that power of the implicit curriculum. There was this sense of pressure, from the outside to keep going, but there was also something inside of me that resisted it. The expectations had become so much a part of me that they were now my own. Our families and our larger society are constantly placing these expectations on us, whether they are spoken or not. There are ways that we are supposed to be, paths that we are supposed to follow. And often the way they manifest is not necessarily anything that's spoken or kind of forced from the outside. These expectations come from what we observe, from the messages that are so subtle that we don't even realize that they are sticking in our brains. And so when we try to defy these expectations, to do something different, we often meet with resistance from within ourselves. It is resistance to change that feels like it is our own. And yet, when we examine it, when we really dig in, we can find its roots elsewhere, in those expectations and assumptions that are placed upon us. Now, this is exactly what we see happening with Isabella in Encanto. Her whole life, she had tried to be perfect, not because anyone had explicitly said to her, "You need to be perfect," but because she had inherited that pressure from her grandmother. In another part of the movie, we learn the story of how her grandmother had needed to flee her home with her 3 small children. In the moment when she thought that they were going to die, there came this miracle, this magic candle that protected her family, created a home for them, and then granted these gifts to her children. Since that moment, the grandmother has been striving to earn this miracle, to make sure that she and her family are good enough for what has been given to them. She has tried to be perfect, and in doing so has given the whole family the idea that they need to be perfect too, that they always need to feel grateful, and that they need to earn those gifts. There's nothing malicious or even intentional about the way that the grandmother passes on that expectation, but it ends up being incredibly harmful, placing pressure on her children and grandchildren that becomes too much for them to handle. Now, my favorite example of this, because it is so real but also a little comical, is Peppa, the aunt in the story, whose gift it is to control the weather. The thing is, she doesn't really control the weather so much as her emotions affect the weather around her. So if she's worried or sad or scared, she starts to get this little cloud above her head. And it might start raining or thundering or lightning. And whenever this happens, the grandmother points it out as a flaw, saying, "You've got a cloud," right? So she's always going around anxiously stroking her hair, saying, "Clear skies, clear skies, clear skies." Now, in Isabella's case, the expectation she struggles with is similar in some ways. That idea that she has to be beautiful and graceful, just like those rows and rows of roses that she grows. She can't be complicated or have conflicting emotions, and God forbid she express those emotions by growing anything other than flowers with her gift. Now, this expectation has gotten so ingrained in her that she isn't even aware that she can grow other things. Until Mirabelle makes her so mad that she finally admits the truth, that she never wanted to get married, and out pops that cactus. Her anger finally gets so intense that it overcomes her internal resistance to being anything other than perfect, and she just blossoms in that song we heard, quite literally. Now, for me, this scene is such an important reminder of the ways in which we unknowingly limit ourselves, treading only those well-worn paths rather than making new ones, and how overcoming our resistance to change within ourselves becomes an act of resistance in and of itself. It is resistance to the patterns we were taught as children, or to the status quo, or to the limitations that have been placed on us by others, and to these societal expectations that we know were never designed to serve us. This work of untangling our internal resistance is not easy. That resistance has been built to be so sturdy and tough, strengthened by the messages and experiences throughout our lives. But I do believe that it is some of the most important inner work that we can do. Because these expectations don't just come from our families or our immediate communities, they also come from all the different systems that operate in our world. The systems that were rarely designed with our well-being in mind. We know that we live in a world where systems of domination and oppression rule our everyday actions in ways that we do not even fully understand. It is not just our families that shape us, but also our race, our socioeconomic status, our gender or the gender people place upon us, the way our bodies look or move or function. All of the identities we hold come with certain expectations, certain well-worn paths that even with our best intentions, we are not able to fully evade. I know I see this in myself in the ways in which I hesitate to take up space as a woman. Now, I didn't even realize this about myself until someone else pointed it out to me. It was the World Cup final, and Tristan and I were trying to find a place in New York City to watch the game. And we found this very, very, very full bar, standing room only, and the only place left for us to stand was in front of tables, right? So picture that, full of people sitting down. And so we were potentially blocking their view of the game. Now, this didn't seem to bother Tristan at all. And he's taller than me. But I was so uncomfortable. In fact, I couldn't stay for more than a few minutes before I made us leave. And as we were walking around trying to find another less crowded place, I asked Tristan why he thought it bothered me so much more than him that I might be blocking other people from seeing. And his answer was very blunt and very true. He said, "It's because you're a woman and you've been socialized not to take up space." Now, this all seems very obvious now, but that was such an aha moment for me. It's why I sometimes say he's a better feminist than I am. I had not realized the extent to which that was ingrained in me. The idea that I had to make myself small, had to accommodate for other people. The resistance I had to taking up space in that bar was not about people complaining or giving me nasty looks. It was what was happening, right? No one really cared. It was fully from within me, from myself. And yet, at the same time, it was fully what had been taught to me in so many ways through the years. It was how patriarchy had carefully groomed me to respond. So well was I trained that I was not even aware that I was acting out that training. Now, I'm not saying that I need to learn how to block people's views more comfortably, but I do think there's some deep unlearning that we need to do in order to resist the systems of oppression that keep us trapped. And it is tricky business, because it is the business of resisting the resistance that we feel within ourselves. We are products of our training, the explicit and the implicit, that which we learn from our families, from our communities, and from our larger world. It is challenging, this work of unlearning to which we are called, but it is vitally important to our ability to truly resist the toxic patterns and oppressive systems that have them ingrained themselves often in our very bones. And it starts, I think, with simply noticing that resistance within ourselves, saying, "Hey, I see you. I see you. What are you? Where did you come from?" Noticing that resistance to living into our full potential or to who we want to be. Our resistance to challenging the status quo, the expectations of ourselves. Noticing it and then examining that resistance with curiosity. Wondering, as Isabella did in the song, what else can I do? Who else can I be? How else can we live more fully and more deeply together? May we do the work that we are called to do, the noticing, the examining, the resisting together. May it be so.